As the sleek, silver spacecraft descended through the Earth's atmosphere, inside Zarla, a noblewoman from Thrylix, prepared for her first meeting with the humans. Her entourage buzzed around her, adjusting her regal attire, a flowing robe of shimmering fabrics that changed color with her mood. The ship landed with a graceful thud on the landing pad of the United Nations headquarters in New York, where Michael Chun awaited her arrival. As the hatch opened, Zarla stepped out, her presence commanding attention from all who gathered to greet her. Michael stepped forward with a polite smile, extending his hand. "Welcome to Earth, Lady Zarla. I'm Michael Chun, appointed as your liaison during your stay." Zarla took his hand, her grip firm. "Thank you, Michael. It is a pleasure to be here, though I hope the negotiations will be as pleasant as your welcome." They walked side by side into the building, surrounded by a mix of human and alien diplomats. Michael pointed out various Earth artifacts and artworks along the corridors, explaining their historical and cultural significance. "I must admit, your planet has a rich history, quite colorful and vibrant," Zarla commented, her tone a mix of admiration and curiosity. "Yes, each piece tells a story of our past," Michael replied. "Much like the attire you wear, I assume?" "Indeed," Zarla chuckled softly. "This robe represents my family's lineage and our planet's natural beauty." As they entered a private conference room, Zarla glanced around, taking in the stark contrast between the ornate decor of her world and the functional, minimalist style of human design. "I'm curious, Michael." Zarla began as they sat across from each other at a large round table. "What do humans expect from this alliance? Our interests are vast and varied." Michael met her gaze, his expression serious. "Humans value collaboration but also respect. We seek partners who are interested in mutual growth and understanding, not just strategic advantage." Zarla nodded thoughtfully. "Respect is the foundation of any strong relationship. It seems we have common ground already." As their discussion delved deeper into potential areas of collaboration, Michael was impressed by Zarla's insight and the depth of her questions. It was clear she was not here merely for ceremonial reasons. She truly wanted to understand humanity. "Tell me, Michael," Zarla asked after a pause, "what do you enjoy most about your planet?" Michael smiled, a spark in his eyes. "The diversity, Lady Zarla. Every culture, every individual has something unique to contribute. It's what makes Earth special." Zarla's robe shifted to a soft blue, reflecting her mood. "I hope to see this diversity for myself." "And you shall," Michael promised. "We have arranged various cultural visits for you, including artistic performances, historical sites, and technological hubs." As they wrapped up their meeting with plans for the coming days, Zarla extended her hand once more. "I look forward to learning more, Michael. Thank you for such an enlightening start to my journey here." Michael shook her hand, his respect for the alien noblewoman deepening. "The pleasure is all ours, Lady Zarla. Welcome to Earth, and may this be the beginning of a fruitful friendship between our worlds." As they parted ways, Michael couldn't help but feel that this meeting might just mark the dawn of a new era for both Earth and Thrylix. Chapter 2: Cultural Revelations. Zarla's curiosity about Earth was insatiable. Following their initial meeting, Michael arranged for her to attend a cultural exhibit showcasing Earth's rich tapestry of traditions and innovations. As they approached the venue, a converted warehouse adorned with lights and filled with the sounds of a live jazz band, Michael explained the significance of each exhibit they would see. "Tonight, we'll start with something uniquely human, music," Michael said, leading Zarla through the bustling crowd. Zarla listened intently to the rhythm and melodies. "There's a freedom in this music that feels very lively. It's quite different from Thrylixian harmonics." Michael smiled, watching her reaction. "It's called jazz. It's all about improvisation and feeling the moment. Shall we try something even more hands-on?" He guided her to a dance area where couples swayed effortlessly to the music. With a playful grin, Michael offered his hand. "Care to dance? I'm not familiar with your steps, but I'll give it my best attempt," Zarla replied, accepting his hand with a laugh. As they danced, Zarla found the rhythm and began to move with a grace that surprised both her and Michael. "You're a natural," Michael complimented as the song ended. Zarla's laughter rang out, clear and joyful. "Your guidance was impeccable, Michael." They continued their tour, exploring exhibits on Earth's technological advancements. Michael introduced Zarla to various innovators and thinkers, discussing potential collaborations. Zarla was particularly intrigued by renewable energy technologies. "This solar panel, for instance," Michael explained, pointing to a sleek, efficient design, "converts more than 40% of sunlight into energy. Perhaps there's room for synergy with Thrilixian solar technology." "Indeed, we could enhance our system significantly with this," Zarla mused, examining the panel. "Collaboration could lead to remarkable advancements for both our worlds." Their next stop was a food festival section, where Zarla experienced the flavors of Earth. From spicy to sweet, each dish offered a new sensation. Michael watched with amusement as Zarla bravely sampled a particularly fiery sauce. "Exquisite, though quite powerful," Zarla gasped, reaching for a glass of water. "Your planet's flavors are as diverse as its cultures." Michael chuckled. "We pride ourselves on our culinary diversity. It's a way to experience the world without leaving home." As the evening drew to a close, they found themselves at a quiet overlook, watching the city lights shimmer below. "Today was enlightening," Zarla said, her tone reflective. "I see now why you cherish your planet's diversity. It's not just in your cultures or technologies, but in every aspect of human life." Michael nodded. "And tonight was just a glimpse. There's so much more to share." "I look forward to it," Zarla replied, her eyes bright with anticipation, "and to sharing more about Thrylix with you." Their conversation deepened into the night, each sharing stories of their homeworlds. It was clear that what began as a diplomatic assignment was blossoming into a genuine exchange of ideas and values. As they said their goodnights, Michael felt a sense of accomplishment. Zarla was not only learning about humanity, she was experiencing it, and he, in turn, was gaining a deeper understanding of a once mysterious alien culture. Together, they were paving the way for a meaningful alliance, one based on mutual respect and shared discovery. Chapter 3: Unexpected Friendship. After the cultural exhibit, Michael and Zarla began spending more time together outside the formalities of diplomacy. Their official duties kept them busy, but they managed to steal moments to explore Earth's offerings. One afternoon, Michael proposed an outing to a nearby national park. Zarla accepted the invitation, intrigued by the idea of experiencing Earth's natural beauty. The two traveled by a sleek, energy-efficient vehicle to the park, a vast expanse of emerald forests, crystalline streams, and dramatic mountain ridges. As they walked along a winding path through towering trees, Zarla marveled at the untouched landscape. "This feels ancient," Zarla said, pausing to run her fingers over the rough bark of a tree. "On Thrylix, our natural reserves are pristine, but they're carefully managed. This feels untamed." Michael smiled. "There's a kind of freedom here. Nature has its own way of flourishing without much intervention. It reminds us of our roots, of where we came from." Zarla nodded thoughtfully. "On Thrylix, our environment is harmonized with our cities, but perhaps we've lost something along the way. I didn't expect your planet to feel so alive." As they continued, Michael shared stories of his childhood camping trips and the lessons he'd learned from spending time in the wilderness. Zarla listened intently, occasionally asking questions about human survival techniques, the history of the park, or the creatures they might encounter. At one point, they came upon a narrow river. Michael crouched down, picked up a flat stone, and effortlessly sent it skipping across the water's surface. Zarla raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "How did you do that?" she asked. "It's all about the angle and the flick of your wrist," Michael explained. "Here, give it a try." Zarla picked up a smooth stone and mimicked Michael's movements. The stone plopped into the water without bouncing once. Michael grinned. "Not bad for a first try. Let's adjust your grip a bit." He stood close, guiding her hand with his own. "Now, tilt your wrist just a little, like this, and throw." This time, the stone skipped twice before sinking. Zarla let out a delighted laugh. I see. It's a matter of precision and technique. You'll get the hang of it, Michael said, stepping back. It's about practice, not strength. They spent a while by the river, trading attempts and exchanging banter. It was a far cry from the solemn negotiations and grand events they were accustomed to. Here, amid the rustling leaves and sparkling water, they could simply be themselves. When they grew tired, Michael led Zarla to a sunny clearing where they could sit and rest. As they gazed out over the park's rolling hills, their conversation turned more personal. Your people seem to have a gift for finding balance in the natural world, Zarla observed. Yet you've also built sprawling cities, advanced technologies, and intricate societies. How do you reconcile the two? Michael shrugged. It's not always easy. There are conflicts, mistakes, and lessons along the way. But at our best, we try to learn from those mistakes and keep improving. I guess you could say we're still figuring it out. Zarla considered his words. That sounds familiar. On Thrilix, we also struggle with balance between tradition and innovation, between expansion and preservation. But I suppose that's part of growth. It's something all civilizations wrestle with, Michael said. Maybe that's one thing humans and Thrilixians have in common. The constant push to do better. They fell into a comfortable silence. The only sound the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird. For a brief moment, the weight of their responsibilities melted away, replaced by a quiet connection. Eventually, they made their way back to the vehicle, the sun dipping low on the horizon. As the park's shadows stretched long, Michael glanced over at Zarla and smiled. Thank you for coming out here. It's been nice to get away from the usual routine. Zarla returned his smile. I've learned more about Earth in these few hours than I have in any conference room. And I've come to understand you better as well, Michael. I'm glad, he said simply. I think we make a good team. Perhaps we do, Zarla replied, her tone light yet sincere. As they drove back, Zarla looked out the window, watching the landscape shift from wild greenery to bustling city streets. She felt a deepening respect for humanity's complex relationship with its environment, and a growing admiration for the man who had shown her this side of his world. Chapter 4. The Gala of Galaxies. The multi-species gala was held aboard a vast orbital platform, spinning gently above Earth. The structure was a marvel of engineering, blending architectural elements from countless civilizations. As Michael and Zarla entered the main hall, the room shimmered with vibrant lights and holographic displays. Dozens of alien races mingled, their clothing and forms a kaleidoscope of color, texture, and movement. Live music, a collaboration of human and alien performers, resonated throughout the venue. Michael adjusted the formal jacket of his diplomatic uniform and looked around in mild awe. This place is incredible, he said, his eyes scanning the crowd. I'm not even sure where to start. Zarla, clad in a flowing gown that caught and refracted light in intricate patterns, smiled at him. It's your world, Michael. You must show me how humans host a gala. Michael chuckled. Well, we don't usually host them in orbit, but I'll give it my best shot. He offered his arm, and Zarla took it, letting him guide her through the crowd. They stopped at an exhibit that displayed an array of artifacts from Earth's history, including a centuries-old spacesuit and a scale model of the Voyager spacecraft. Is this what your people used to travel into the stars? Zarla asked, studying the spacesuit closely. Michael nodded. That's one of the early ones. It wasn't comfortable, but it got the job done. Back then, we were just figuring out how to leave our own planet. Zarla tilted her head. You must have been quite bold to take such risks. More stubborn than bold, Michael said with a grin. But it paid off. We kept improving, learning from each step, and now we're here. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another human delegate, a tall man named Jacob Armitage. Jacob carried himself with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, and his sharp suit and slicked-back hair made him look like he belonged on the cover of a fashion magazine rather than in a diplomatic hall. Michael, Jacob said, clapping him on the back. You clean up nicely. Michael sighed but managed a polite smile. Good to see you, Jacob. Jacob turned his attention to Zarla, his smile widening. And you must be the famous Lady Zarla of Thrylix. I've heard a lot about you. Zarla inclined her head graciously. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Armitage. Jacob smoothly stepped in closer, offering Zarla his hand. Please call me Jacob. You're by far the most distinguished guest here tonight. Perhaps you'd care to join me for a drink? I'd be honored to show you around. Before Zarla could respond, Michael interjected. Actually, we were just about to head to the main observation deck. It offers the best view of Earth. Jacob raised an eyebrow but didn't press the issue. Of course. Another time, then. He gave Zarla a charming smile before walking off. Zarla turned to Michael, a flicker of curiosity in her gaze. It seems you have quite the rivalry with that one. Michael shrugged. Jacob likes to make an impression. Let's just say we don't always see eye to eye. Interesting, Zarla said, her expression unreadable. But let's continue to this observation deck of yours. I'd like to see Earth from above. They walked together to the deck, which was lined with large, curved windows that offered a breathtaking view of the planet below. The blue and green sphere hung suspended in the black void, its surface dotted with glittering city lights. It's beautiful, Zarla said softly, placing a hand on the window's transparent surface. I can see why you treasure it. It's home, Michael said simply. No matter how far we travel, this will always be where we started. Zarla turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. Your connection to your world is admirable. It shows in how you carry yourself, how you speak of your people. Michael felt a slight blush rise to his cheeks. I just do what I can. Everyone plays their part. As the gala continued, Michael and Zarla found themselves sharing more stories about their families, their childhoods, and the challenges they had faced. Zarla opened up about her early years on Thrylix, her struggles to prove herself in a society that demanded perfection. Michael, in turn, spoke of his own journey, from a small-town kid with big dreams to a diplomat representing humanity on a galactic stage. Their conversation flowed easily, their laughter coming more freely. For the first time, the line between professional collaboration and personal connection began to blur, and neither seemed in any hurry to redraw it. Chapter 5. A Clash of Duties. After the gala, Michael and Zarla's working relationship became more personal. They spent late nights discussing the subtle nuances of their respective cultures, sharing stories, and challenging each other's perspectives. While the diplomatic mission was still at the forefront, it became increasingly difficult to ignore the growing sense of camaraderie and something more between them. One evening, as they reviewed a draft of their upcoming presentation to the Galactic Council, Zarla leaned back in her chair and studied Michael with a faint smile. Your passion for these negotiations is surprising. You've shown me a side of humanity I didn't expect. Michael paused, glancing up from his notes. What did you expect? To be blunt? A race so eager to prove itself that it might act recklessly. Instead, I find humans to be cautious, even measured. At least you are. He chuckled softly, setting his pen down. I think we've made plenty of reckless decisions in our history, but these talks are important. I don't want to let anyone down. Zarla's gaze softened, her voice lowering. It's not just duty, is it? There's something personal driving you. Michael hesitated. Is it that obvious? It's in the way you talk about your people, she said. You carry the weight of their expectations. I recognize that. On Thrylix, the pressures of lineage and responsibility can be overwhelming. Michael met her eyes, sensing the sincerity in her words. Sometimes it feels like you're walking a tightrope. One wrong move and everything you've worked for comes crashing down. Zarla nodded, her expression thoughtful. I've lived my whole life on that tightrope. For a brief moment, they were no longer a human diplomat and a Thrylixian noblewoman. They were two people who understood the burden of duty. Their quiet moment, however, was short-lived. The following morning, Michael was called to an emergency meeting with Earth's delegation. There had been unexpected delays in the trade agreements that formed the backbone of the talks. Some human officials were losing patience, suggesting more aggressive negotiation tactics. Michael argued against the approach, pushing for diplomacy over confrontation. Hours later, he emerged from the meeting, exhausted but resolute. Zarla was waiting in the corridor, her expression unreadable. "Another crisis?" she asked as he approached. "You could say that," he replied, running a hand through his hair. "Some of our people want to push harder, but I think it'll only make things worse." Zarla studied him for a moment before stepping closer. "You are in a difficult position. You must balance the expectations of your leaders with what you believe is right. I know that conflict well." Michael sighed. "It feels like no matter what I do, someone's going to be unhappy." "Perhaps," Zarla said, her voice steady. "But what matters is whether you can stand by your choices. Even if others disagree, you must believe in the path you've chosen." Michael frowned, his frustration surfacing. "That's easy to say when you're not the one facing the consequences." "Do you think I've never faced consequences?" Zarla's voice was sharper now. "I was not born into this position by chance, Michael. I fought to earn it, to prove my worth, and I've made decisions that many have questioned. But I did what I believed was best for my people, even when it cost me." The corridor was silent. Michael looked at her, realizing he had never seen this side of Zarla before. Her voice, her words. She wasn't lecturing him. She was sharing something deeply personal, something earned through her own struggles. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I needed to hear that." Zarla's expression softened. "It's what colleagues are for, Michael. And friends." Her words lingered in his mind as they returned to the conference room. Together, they dove back into their work, drafting revised proposals and planning their next moves. While the pressures of their duties remained, Michael felt a renewed sense of determination. He wasn't alone in this struggle. Zarla understood the weight he carried, and for the first time, he felt that they were truly partners. Two individuals striving for a common goal, even as they walked the tightrope of duty. Chapter 6. The Touch of Understanding. The stress of the past days hung in the air like a low fog. Michael and Zarla had spent hours locked in discussions, navigating the pitfalls of a complicated alliance. While progress had been made, they were both feeling the strain. That evening, Michael invited Zarla for a walk in a nearby park, hoping a change of scenery might help clear their heads. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the park lights flickered on, casting a warm glow along the winding paths. The sound of leaves rustling in the gentle breeze and the occasional chirp of crickets created a soothing backdrop. "This place is quite different from the cities I've seen," Zarla remarked, looking up at the towering trees. "It's a reminder of what we're working for," Michael replied. "A lot of people here take these parks for granted. I come out here when I need to think." "And do you have a lot to think about these days?" Zarla asked, glancing at him. Michael smiled faintly. "More than I'd like to admit." They walked in silence for a few moments, the tension of their earlier debates slowly dissipating. As they reached a small wooden bridge overlooking a tranquil pond, Michael leaned against the railing, gazing at the water. "I've been meaning to apologize," he said, breaking the silence, "for being short with you the other day. You didn't deserve that." Zarla tilted her head. "You were under pressure. I understand." "Still," Michael said, turning to face her, "it wasn't fair to you. You've been nothing but patient, and I let my frustration get the better of me." Zarla studied him for a moment before nodding. "Apology accepted. And I should apologize as well. I may have been too insistent, too quick to push my own agenda." Michael's smile returned, warmer this time. "Well, if we're both apologizing, maybe we're not so different after all." Zarla stepped closer, resting her hands on the railing beside his. "That's becoming clearer to me every day." The two of them stood there, side by side, watching the ripples on the pond. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Favorite childhood memories, humorous cultural misunderstandings, and the strange foods they'd encountered during their travels. Zarla laughed as Michael recounted a story about his first attempt at cooking a traditional Thralixian dish, which had gone disastrously wrong. You actually tried to cook with grithroot? Zarla said, shaking her head. It's no wonder you ended up with purple smoke in your kitchen. Well, in my defense, the recipe didn't say it was toxic unless boiled for exactly 4 minutes, Michael replied, grinning. I thought I was being adventurous. Adventurous is one word for it, Zarla teased. Foolhardy might be another. They shared a laugh, the tension of the past few days finally melting away. As the laughter faded, a comfortable silence settled between them. Zarla's gaze lingered on Michael, her expression softening. Michael, she said after a moment, her voice quieter now, I feel at ease around you. That's not something I'm accustomed to. Michael looked at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. You hide it well, but I think I understand what you mean. I'm usually too focused on my work to let my guard down. And yet here we are, Zarla said, her lips curving into a small smile. Michael took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and placed a hand on hers. Zarla didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand slightly, brushing her fingertips against his. The simple gesture carried a depth of meaning neither of them could put into words. It's strange, Zarla murmured, to find such connection across such vast differences. Michael nodded. It is, but maybe that's why it feels so important. As the night deepened, the stars above them twinkled brightly, unimpeded by the city's lights. They stayed on the bridge a while longer, their hands still lightly touching, the shared warmth between them pushing back the chill of the evening. In that quiet moment, the complexities of their roles and the weight of their responsibilities seemed to fade, leaving only the unspoken understanding that they were no longer simply colleagues. They were something more. Chapter 7, Unity in Diversity. A few days after their moment in the park, Michael and Zarla found themselves back in the United Nations building, working tirelessly to finalize their proposal. The sun poured through the large windows, casting long streaks of light across the table where they sat, surrounded by notes, datapads, and holographic schematics. I think this section still sounds too formal, Michael said, pointing at the display hovering above the table. It's like we're talking at them instead of to them. Zarla leaned closer to the projection, her silver hair catching the sunlight. How would you phrase it, then? Michael scratched his chin. Maybe something more conversational? Like, instead of saying, the combined efforts of our civilizations will yield unparalleled progress, we could say, by working together, we'll accomplish more than we ever could alone. Zarla's lips curved into a faint smile. That does sound more human. Very well, let's adjust it. As Zarla began typing on her device, the door to the room slid open, and Jacob Armitage strode in. His sharp suit was immaculate as always, and his smirk suggested he had overheard their conversation. Taking a more folksy approach, Michael? Jacob said, crossing his arms. You're not writing a campaign speech. Michael straightened, his expression calm but firm. We're trying to make the proposal more accessible. Clarity is more effective than pomp. Jacob raised an eyebrow. As long as you don't lose the gravitas. This isn't a casual agreement we're discussing. I'm aware of that, Michael replied. We're crafting a message that reflects the spirit of cooperation, not just a list of demands. Zarla observed the exchange silently, her sharp eyes flicking between the two men. Finally, she interjected. Gentlemen, this is about creating a foundation for mutual understanding. If we cannot present our vision in a way that inspires trust and goodwill, the proposal will fail, no matter how polished the language. Jacob hesitated, then gave a small shrug. Fair enough. I'll leave you to it. Just remember, this is a defining moment for Earth. As Jacob left, Michael let out a sigh. He's not wrong, but he doesn't seem to trust anyone else to handle it. Zarla turned to him. You trust yourself, don't you? Michael glanced at her, surprised by the direct question. I guess I do. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. And I trust you as well, Zarla said, her voice steady. You've shown me that humanity's strength lies in its ability to adapt, to learn. That gives me confidence. Michael's expression softened. Thanks, Zarla. That means a lot. They returned to their work, the rhythm of their collaboration growing more seamless. Michael noticed how Zarla had come to anticipate his suggestions, and she noted how Michael had begun incorporating her perspectives without hesitation. Their partnership was becoming intuitive. When the proposal was finally complete, they leaned back in their chairs, both exhausted and relieved. "It's done," Michael said, exhaling heavily. "Now all we have to do is present it." "Easier said than done," Zarla replied. "But I believe we've crafted something that reflects our shared values." Michael stood and stretched. "Why don't we get out of here for a bit? Clear our heads before tomorrow." Zarla considered the suggestion, then nodded. A change of scenery would be welcome. They walked down to a nearby garden, where sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the stone paths. The fresh air and the quiet rustle of foliage were a welcome contrast to the tense atmosphere of the conference rooms. "This garden reminds me of a place on Thrilix," Zarla said as they strolled. "It was a sanctuary where we'd go to reflect. I often went there alone, but I think I'd have enjoyed sharing it with someone." Michael glanced at her, his curiosity piqued. "You don't strike me as someone who spends much time alone." Zarla smiled faintly. "When you're born into responsibility, you learn to rely on yourself. It's rare to find someone who understands the weight you carry." Michael thought about that as they walked. He was beginning to realize how much he and Zarla had in common, how their lives, though so different, were shaped by similar pressures. As they passed a fountain, Michael stopped and looked at her. "You know, Zarla, I don't think I've ever met anyone like you. You've challenged my assumptions more times than I can count." Zarla turned to face him fully, her expression thoughtful. "And you've shown me that humanity's strength isn't just in its technology or its diplomacy. It's in its people." They stood there for a moment, the sounds of the garden surrounding them. For Michael, it was becoming clear that their collaboration was more than just a partnership of convenience. It was the start of something deeper, an understanding that went beyond words, beyond politics. It was the beginning of trust. Chapter 8. A Future Together. The day of the presentation arrived. Delegates from dozens of alien civilizations filled the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The room was a sprawling amphitheater, each delegation seated behind floating desks that hovered in concentric circles around the central stage. Zarla and Michael stood at the podium, side by side, ready to deliver their joint proposal. Michael adjusted the microphone, glancing at Zarla. "You ready?" "I am," Zarla replied calmly, though her robe shifted ever so slightly, betraying a hint of nerves. "And you?" "Not really," Michael admitted with a faint smile. "But I'll manage." Zarla gave a small laugh. "Let's begin, then." As Michael stepped forward to address the assembly, his voice was steady, confident. He spoke about the importance of unity through mutual respect, of building an alliance that valued the strengths of every civilization represented. Zarla followed, elaborating on how cultural exchanges and shared innovation could enrich every member world. The delegates listened closely, some nodding in agreement, others furrowing their brows in thought. After their presentation, questions and comments began to pour in. Some were skeptical, questioning whether humanity had the experience or resources to lead such an initiative. Others expressed concerns about how Thrilix's role might shift under the proposed framework. Zarla responded with clarity, highlighting her planet's commitment to transparency and collaboration. Michael handled the more technical queries, referencing Earth's recent advancements and its dedication to honoring its agreements. The two of them worked in tandem, their voices complementing each other. Their answers were not rehearsed. They were the product of weeks spent developing a genuine understanding of each other's perspectives. As the session came to a close, there was a brief period of tense silence before the lead counselor, an ancient reptilian being known as Kivalx, rose to speak. "Your proposal," Kivalx said, his voice deep and resonant, "has shown us that even the youngest members of this council can offer wisdom. Earth and Thrilix have presented a vision not of dominance, but of shared prosperity. This council will deliberate, but I am optimistic that this plan will serve as a model for future alliances." With that, the assembly dismissed for the day, leaving Michael and Zarla to step off the stage together. The weight of the moment settled over them as they exited the chamber and into a quiet corridor. "Well," Michael said, running a hand through his hair, "that was something." Zarla looked at him, her expression warm. "It was. You spoke well, Michael. I think you made an impression." "So did you," he replied. "I don't think I've ever seen them so engaged. Usually it's just nodding along and a bunch of polite clapping." Zarla's lips curved into a faint smile. "Perhaps we make a good team after all." They walked down the corridor, the soft hum of the station's systems the only sound. The tension of the day gave way to a quieter, more reflective mood. Michael glanced at Zarla, catching her in a rare moment of unguarded thought. "What happens now?" he asked. Zarla paused, considering her words. "We continue. We ensure that what we've started here isn't just a fleeting idea. We show them that unity is more than a concept. It's a choice, one we must make every day." Michael nodded slowly. "I'm not sure what it'll look like, but I'm glad I'm working on it with you." Zarla's gaze softened, her robe shifting to a gentle blue. "And I with you." They reached a large observation window, where the vastness of space stretched out before them. The stars glimmered like scattered diamonds, and Earth's blue and green sphere hung prominently in the distance. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't heavy or awkward. It was a shared quiet, a moment of peace after the storm. Michael leaned against the railing, his voice soft. "You know, when we started all this, I thought it was just another assignment. Another round of meetings, proposals, and signatures. And now?" Zarla asked, her tone light but curious. "Now I think it's more than that. More than just politics," Michael said. "It's about people, working together, trusting each other. I didn't expect to find that here." Zarla stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the planet below. "Nor did I." They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching Earth slowly turn beneath them. Michael's hand brushed against Zarla's. A small, unintentional touch. Neither of them moved away. Instead, Michael turned his head toward her, their eyes meeting. "I'm glad we met," he said quietly. "No matter what happens next, I'm glad it was you standing by my side." Zarla didn't reply immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "As am I, Michael." Their hands touched again, this time deliberately. It wasn't grand or dramatic. It was a simple gesture, but one that carried the weight of everything they had been through together. It was a beginning, not an ending, and both of them knew it.